Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the 2026 midterm elections, and I'll be doing I suppose, semi-monthly Understand Politics fireside chat where I kind of just sit here and talk for a few minutes about a relevant topic, and I don't have a lot to look at, I would say, today. I'm going to focus a little bit on generic ballot polling that's going to serve as a launch pad for a broader discussion I've been meaning to have about the Democratic Party and the state of the 2026 midterms as it stands. And I'm just going to get right into it. So the first thing we're going to do is just look at the latest polls we've been getting. And the important thing to know is that we're still 17 months out or 18 months out from the 2026 midterm elections. So in other words, we're not at all close. A lot can change, and obviously, if you tried to predict the 2022 midterms in May of 2021, you would have had a lot of things wrong. Now, with that being said, the trend looks pretty normal in that, generally speaking, during the first 6 to 8 months of the president's term, their party does okay in the generic ballot polling, and they, fall over time. The Democrats are polling better in generic ballot polling as of late. They've gained a little bit. They've led some recent surveys by good amounts. RCP overall has them up by 2 on the GOP. That's fine for the Democratic Party. Like, I would say it could and it should be better by next year. But for now, it's a fine spot to be in. It doesn't signal disaster, but it also isn't signaling blue wave as at least yet. But I think that broadly, Democrats have a rather under-discussed 2026 problem, and that's what I'm here to speak about today. Now, if we go back to the 2022 midterms, which were, for those of you who remember, just in terms of this channel, I had a really fun time predicting these because I, thought that there were things I was seeing that other people were not seeing. And I don't mean that to say that I'm the greatest electoral analyst of all time. But what I thought the Republicans were doing wrong was they didn't have a consistent, coherent message that stretched from July to September to November. Biden was unpopular, which certainly helped them, but they were triangulating on abortion, and then they tried to pick up crime at the last minute, and it didn't feel like a campaign that was going to win 240 House seats and win 53 Senate seats. And they ended up losing a seat in the Senate, and they ended up winning 222 House seats off the back of what was a very lackluster performance across the country. They did well in New York, California, and Florida. That's why they won the House. Everywhere else, it was not good. And so the Democrats, I think, read into that as a pretty, for them, they saw it as good news. It was a surprisingly good rejection of Trumpism because they had been tying the Republicans to Trump. They were calling them MAGA Republicans, and it actually seemed to be working. And then 2024 happened, and not only did Donald Trump win the election, not only did Republicans win back the Senate, not only did they hold on to the House, albeit by an even narrower margin, but Donald Trump won the popular vote for the first time ever. And Republicans won the popular vote for the first time since John Kerry was on the ticket for the Democratic Party. So what I'm getting at here is that midterms often mask symptoms of broader problems. And just to kind of prove that, right, like the Democrats, I don't think were meaningfully less popular in 2024 than they were in 2022. Maybe like there were specific examples of Biden being less popular 2 years later, but like I think people were still really upset with the Democrats in 2022. And locally, Democrats had some pretty bad results. And especially in California and New York, they did, they had terrible performances. And for reasons similar to, why they did so badly across the board in 2024. People were upset with Democratic governance. They didn't trust Democratic politicians. They were sick of it. They wanted change. And so even though 2022 was like a broadly impressive performance for Democrats, it kind of hurt them in the sense that it masked the broader problem. What really should have been a result that people put in more context was a result that I think a lot of Democrats hoped signified, no matter what we do, people are always going to dislike Trump and the Republicans more. Because that was what a lot of people thought 2022 was, and they were wrong. And so 2026, right, like Democrats might have a good 2026, I'm not sure. I'm talking about why I'm going to later in this video get into why I think that might not necessarily happen. But I think that, say they do have a good 2026, um, I don't think the party image is going to be fixed by then. And that is really what I want to talk about for just a few minutes today, which is that the Democratic Party, like the Republicans in 2022, but to a worse extent, do not have a coherent message. And so when I saw the Republicans triangulating in October 2022 on abortion, and when I saw them try to push crime at the last minute as a reason to vote for them, and when I saw uh, the desperation that they were kind of showing when they were pulling out of Arizona, and when they were getting concerned about losing Trump seats in the Midwest, like Ohio's 9th district, right? I think Democrats could be on that route if they're not careful come the fall of 2026. And what it comes from is the fact that they don't have a coherent message because their party brand is not good. And right now we're America's unique because we're a two-party system. Most other countries, or most other Western liberal democracies, are on two-party systems, right? Like Canada. I mean, obviously there's two-party dominant systems. Like in the UK, it's really the Conservatives versus Labour, although that's actually changing right now as we speak. In Canada, it's usually the Liberal Party versus the Conservative Party, although I think in the late 2000s, for example, the NDP was more popular than the Liberals at certain points, right? But America is uniquely entrenched with these two parties. And so even though the Republican Party is actually not like super popular, or not really that much more popular than they were in 2020, the Democrats are like 15, 20, 25% less popular among the country as a whole than they were in 2020 or in 2018. And that's why they are so battered right now. That's why the Democratic Party is at not an all-time low, but like a point that is worse than a lot of people can remember. And so it is really hard, no matter how unpopular Donald Trump is, or no matter how good your candidates are individually, to do well across the board and have a successful midterm election when you are, as a party, are so deeply unpopular. And this is a really bad time to be unpopular, because 2025 and 2026, or I'm predicting it, but like right now at the present moment, 2025 is literally, you can make the argument, this is the most polarized time in American politics ever. So it isn't like, maybe the party as a whole is unpopular nationally, but like a popular Democratic politician can win a House election because they're like, charismatic and people like them as a person. No. When in a polarized, nationalized environment like this, you are tied to the party that is next to your name on the ballot. And that makes it hard for even good Democratic candidates to win in competitive districts, in competitive states, and in competitive townships that they're running in. And so the Republicans had this issue in 2022 where, and it's not the same thing, because I think Republicans shot themselves in the foot with candidate quality, and that was really the defining moment of that, the defining, dynamic of that midterm. But like, the Democrats could very well run good candidates and not do well because they don't have a message, right? And I think something the Republicans have been good at exploiting is kind of the notion that like Democrats are kind of empty suits. And again, when I make these statements, I always like to say like, I'm not endorsing any political party. That's not what I'm here to do. Obviously, like as someone who commentates in politics, of course I have my own views, but like I'm here to talk about the electoral dynamics of it. And the Republicans, and I think Trump especially, have been good at labeling Democrats as empty suits in the sense that they're only there to oppose Trump. They're only there to just serve as a roadblock to Trump, right? Like in 2020, I think this actually worked a little bit, where the Republicans the argument was that why would you're only voting for Biden to not vote for Trump. Like, a vote for Biden isn't a vote. It's not a vote for Biden. It's a vote against Donald Trump. And so that perception, I think, has lingered. It's kind of evolved into this perception of weakness among the Democratic Party, or among voters of the Democratic Party. And what we saw was that, and you can actually see this in focus groups where journalists will ask voters to ascribe animals to the political parties, and they'll say the Republicans are like lions. They're stronger. Maybe I think they're too harsh. I think they're too blunt. Maybe I think there's things they do that are too cruel. But they're assertive, and they do what they want. And Democrats were compared to traditionally more fearful or submissive animals. And I think someone said that they were a deer in the headlights, and they're not moving. They're just getting hit by the car, right? So the problem the Democrats have, and this is like a really, I think, fundamental thing, is that they are perceived to be the weaker party. And you can say that's a good thing because obviously there are people who really dislike the Republicans and what they do. But when you're perceived as being weak, there's no level of confidence voters can give you in terms of a mandate, even if even in a midterm election where you don't have to be led by one politician, right? That's an advantage to parties out of powers. They don't have a one politician defining them in midterm elections. They have to go with one dynamic. They have to go with one like trend nationally. And the Democratic Party, even though they might not have someone leading them, which for the time being, that's good because they don't have a person, I think, right now who can bring that party together, right, effectively and win over moderate voters, right. But they lack the confidence and the legitimacy among the American people to create a dynamic across, or not to create, but like to benefit from a dynamic across the country. There's no one unifying reason for moderate voters to vote for Democrats, in the upcoming midterm elections. Obviously, which are far away, but I'm talking about like if they were like 2 weeks from now, right? And obviously things could change. Democrats' time is to their advantage right now. Things can change, but like what I think is just the problem here is that, like the Republicans in 2022, the Democratic Party does not have a coherent message. And I know I keep saying that, but I'm going to keep hammering it because it is really hard to win nowadays when you don't have a motivator that drives people, right? Donald Trump is the best motivator Democrats have. And by the way, he will get them to a certain point. Democrats are going to win. They're not going to win, but I'll say a lot of people are going to turn out in 2026 for Democrats just because they don't like Donald Trump. That's the disadvantage to Trump. He brings a lot of advantages to the table for the GOP. That's a disadvantage of him, is that he can bring people out against him really easily no matter what. But beyond that, to win over moderate voters who need to win back competitive areas, to win over working class voters who don't trust you anymore, it's going to take more than I'm not Donald Trump. It's going to take more than maybe you're mad about X, Y, and Z thing. It's going to take a coherent message. And that's the same reason that 2022 is bad for the Republicans, because even though people were mad about inflation, about gas prices, about Biden, the Republicans didn't have a coherent message to unify everyone and say, vote Republican now. They didn't. And some of them did vote Republican. Some of these voters voted Republican anyways because they were really mad at Biden and they wanted to take that out somehow. Some of them stayed home, and some of them voted for Democrats because they preferred the local candidates or because they didn't care. And so the Democrats are now in that exact position. They might have better candidates locally than Republicans have. That's kind of a dynamic that's been manifest in the past few elections. But broadly speaking, without a message to bring people to the table, it's really hard to win. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. It doesn't matter if Trump's unpopular. It doesn't matter if Democrats have a turnout advantage. It's going to be hard for them to get a good midterm, a legitimately good midterm, unless they can bring something to the table that isn't Trump. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, which is that until something changes, I don't think there's going to be a big blue wave. Maybe Democrats will. I think Democrats can win back the House. Maybe they'll win looking ahead of the Senate races, maybe they'll flip a Senate seat, right? I think their best shot is North Carolina. We'll see how Maine goes, but right now it looks like no one's going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. But until you get a level of consistency and a message, it is going to be incredibly difficult to win over voters who didn't vote for you, last November. So thank you for staying and hopefully listening to this fireside chat. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Let me know what you want to see. Always open to suggestions.